or Workday ends, whichever. So thank you for starting that. All right, so without further ado, let's just get right into it. So we're going to be using Workday 16. I'll drop the link to this in the chat for everyone, so you can try to follow along. And let's see, I think we can wait for a few more people. We have about 100 more people left. All right. Okay, so I do see one question so far has come in. Slides available at a later date. Well, I can send you our one slide, but we only have one slide. So I don't know what you're going to do with it. This is our one slide. This is recorded. All right, so for those of you joining here, this is a Workday hands-on training. There are no slides, and we will be recording this, or we are recording this right now, actually. And so this will be posted. If you are unable to access this link, maybe to some FT issues that are at this point out of our hands, you can try to follow along with different, I think we can drop the Sam, can you drop the sandbox tenant link in there, the UW 9? And you can try to follow along with that one. But all right, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So Sam, real quick, can you confirm that you see my screen, Workday?
Yes, I see your screen.
Thank you. Okay. So this is what Workday will look like, maybe slightly different in 3 days, but you'll sign in with the UW staff sign in. And then you will sign in with your UW Net ID, do the duos thing. And then you will be in Workday. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to remove this and show you how to add it. So first and foremost, when you sign in on Workday on July 6th, it will most likely be blank. It'll be a default. And you will need to add the expenses app. You can add all kinds of different shortcuts to personalize your Workday. But first and foremost, we recommend adding the expenses app. So click on the global navigation menu here. It'll bring up the menu. We'll click add apps and we'll do expenses. Type in expenses and you'll see the expenses app show up. Click the plus, it adds to the menu. And there it is on the menu. All right. So you guys all might be, well, should be somewhat familiar with Workday already, just from an HRP standpoint, as this is, how we get paid. So if you want to change your preferences, you can go to My Account and change preferences by clicking on the little person over here. But in the interest of time and focusing today, since we're going to want to cover quite a bit and then answer questions, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to be making an expense report with the spend authorization to go to London, as that is the one per diem rate. Well, that is one of the per diem rates that is loaded in this tenant right now. We're going to do it as employee as self, but do not worry. The only difference between employee as self and making it on behalf of someone else is typing create expense report for worker or spend authorization. And then the only difference is you will have to type in their name, but everything else in the process will be the same. And I'm just going to show you how to do it using the expenses app. All right. So let's go ahead and create a spend authorization. So once you click the spend authorization, it'll bring you to this screen. This screen will look quite familiar to all the other spend authorizations or all the other parts of the expense module. And you're going to go ahead and fill it out. So this is how you will request the travel. So this will serve as pre-trip approval and will also create a pre-encumbrance of funds on your budget. Now, whether or not you use this for pre-trip approval is up to the department and shared environment policy. So I'll say it again. Whether or not this is required is up to your shared environment or department. So hopefully, say it. I can say it again, but it will be dependent on your department. So we're going to go ahead and click the start and end dates of the whole trip. So think about this as the start and end dates of business travel. So we're going to be doing a trip for next week. Ideally, you want to do these further in advance, but we'll do it for next week. And description, travel to London. You will click business purpose, business travel reimbursement. We will not be showing the other modules today as they are outside of our scope and not managed by us. So for description, you want to put something saying what the travel is, ideally travel to the location or travel to this conference at this location. And then over here in the justification, you can say why you should go. This will be for your funding approvers. Your department may establish their own policies as to how to guide this, but we're not going to touch on that here. That'll be up to your administrators. So we're just going to keep it simple. Travel to London conference for professional development. So now we're going to go ahead and add spend authorization lines. For a spend authorization, there is only one line that you should be adding. Well, two for business travel. So if you are just doing a regular spend authorization, all you will do is go to this expense line and type spend authorization estimate. Click enter and it will autofill and become a spend authorization estimate. Now, I mentioned that there's two lines that you can use on a spend authorization for business travel reimbursement. The other line is requesting a per diem advance. So I'll use the current state terminology once, and then I'll teach you what it is in the future, and then I'll never use it again. All right. So per diem advances are now called cash advances or travel advances. Travel advances and cash advances are the same thing. You might notice in here, there's an option for field advance. That's a completely different thing. Field advances are the same as field advances now, managed by global services under Arnold. So if you're requesting a per diem advance, instead of typing spend authorization estimate, you would type travel advance. Click travel advance. It'll change to travel advance. It'll show the text for travel advances. And then you'll type in the amount you want and then click cash advance requested. So again, cash advance and travel advance are synonymous, as well as per diem advance. They all mean the same thing. This is just what they're called. It's Workday terminology. So spend authorization estimate is what we're going to do today. Total amount, you want to estimate to the best of your ability using your resources and what you know you're going to spend, how much you will spend, and that's what you'll put here. So theoretically, traveling to London, about $3,000. Now, I'm just pulling this out of a hat, basically, but we've had questions on how this should be determined, and we recommend you calculate how many days of meal and lodging per diem you will need, how much your airfare might be. At this point, we recommend you you book your tickets in advance, do your due diligence, get the good prices. So you should know how much airfare is. So factor that in. And then any other expenses that you may need, such as registration. So factor all that in and get your spend authorization estimate. Now, it is just an estimate. And if you stay within it or below it, it will not need funding approval on the final expense report. But otherwise, it'll just go through the 3 approvals towards the end. And we'll go over approval flows at the end of this module. But yeah, so now memo, we want to type something about our travel, estimate for London travel. All right, work tags, the new budgets. So it'll probably default to something that you don't want your travel expenses being paid to. For example, us, it defaults to our payroll organizational default clearing fund. Now we don't want travel being paid to that. I'm going to put a general operating fund as our resource for today. Yours will be different. There will be a budget to actuals crosswalk published on, I believe, at Go Live. And that will tell you what work tags you will need. We will not cover that today. We would be here all day. So I'm just going to type in, the prefix of the resource that I know that I want, RS 100,000, I think it is, general operating fund, and you click it and it pulls all the driving work tags. All right, so we review it, look at the dates, make sure everything's good. If we requested some cash advance, it would show up here. And now we will submit it. After we submit it, it will go to the cost center manager or whatever funding approver is required based on the work tag selected. We covered this in the VILT training. If you did not attend the VILT training, it'll probably be covered in the job aid, or the VILT trainings will be published. Well, the recordings will be published, and you can refer to those. So we're going to proxy in to show you the full process here. We're going to proxy in as the cost center manager in this case and approve my expense report. So security profile, I don't need to go over this. You will not be proxying in Workday. But let's just pretend I'm Vincent now. So Vincent logs in. He sees my spend authorization and Alicia's. He approves Renee's. Well, actually, if you get yours in right now and you're using the same resource, you can probably help prove it. So Vincent reviews everything for accuracy. Does he want this on his funds? He thinks so. So he approves. And real quick, I'll also approve Alicia's. He also thinks that's good. So you'll see success event approved, and then they're gone. There's other spend authorizations in his thing here, in his queue, but he's done for the day. So now I'm going to stop proxy and become myself again. I am now once again Renee. All right, so notifications, let's see if it pops up there. So you'll see I just got a notification that my expend authorization was completed, and I can click the details and see that Vincent approved it. So if you're familiar, you're getting a little deja vu, you'll realize that's pretty much the same as when your boss approves your PTO requests. All right, so now that we have our spend authorization created and approved and encumbered on the budget, we will now go ahead and make the expense report. Now we're going to tie this expense report to the business travel or to the spend authorization that we just did, but I'll go through the options here. Creation options, create new expense report, copy previous expense report. So we can create a new expense report completely from scratch. We can copy one of the ones that we made in the past. We have some options. As you can see, I've made a few. Or you can create one from a spend authorization. Now, this is where that spend authorization we just submitted will appear. So you click this and you'll see we just made that. So we'll click into it and it will fill in the information we had on it, except for the work tags, which is kind of annoying, and I wish they did that, but that's besides the point. So now that we have this, it fills in the memo for us. This is ideal. So if you remember Ariba, it's been a while, I know. Ariba's in the past for all of us now, but if you remember Ariba, when you created an expense report, it had you give it a title. The memo is that title. So you'll probably just use the same system you guys have been using to create your expense reports in Ariba and name them. You can keep that going. Just remember that memo equals title. All right. So now that we have this, normally you would request your spend authorization in advance. Then the trip happens and then you submit it afterwards for, you don't have to, but anyway, we're not going to get into that. So, but it doesn't stop you from submitting your expense report in advance of the trip. We're going to pretend like we already took it, but so just bear with me on the cognitive dissonance here. So let's go ahead and fill in that resource, same way I did it. And general operating fund. All right, so now we will check everything, expense report date. We can date it as of today, keep things simple. Now this box here, final expense report for spend authorization. If you click this, once this expense report is created and submitted and approved, it will close out the spend authorization. And all funds that are not used in this expense report will be released on the budget. So unencumbered, if you will. Everything else will be paid. If you don't, the spend authorization will stay open until the funds are completely used. All right, so let's make this the final one because I don't anticipate using more spend authorizations or more expense reports today. And then we're going to click OK. This will bring us to actually adding the expense lines. Exciting stuff. So now we're going to create the expense report itself. We're going to go through some general expense lines that you guys will be using, the common ones that you did in Ariba and will likely continue to do in Workday. So you click add, now we're going to go ahead and find the expense item that we want. So it helps to click, I think this is called the radio icon. I don't know. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. And I recommend you go by expense item group. So from here, click expense item group and click transportation. And we're going to do airfare. So notice these are all lumped up in nice little groups, kind of similar to how they were in Ariba. And notice there's also the options for field advance and non-travel. In the real Workday, I believe there will also be an option for CTA verification in here, but as this is a training tenant, that is not in here. Don't ask me why. But do note that you can only have, if your business purpose is travel, you can only have business travel expense items. If your business purpose is field advance or non-travel, you can only have these expense items and so forth. So you cannot mix business purposes. But for the purpose of today's training, our business purpose is travel, and we're going to be doing an airfare line here. So airfare, we're going to London, it'll be foreign. So airfare foreign. And it populates with all these nice instructions that Sam and I put in here. As you can see, we have the Fly America Act, a reminder of it, and link to the policies, and links to policy upgrades and all that fun stuff. So from here, ideally, you would have the itinerary pulled up. In here, you will type in the final amount. There's only going to be one airfare, so just ignore the per unit amount. This is a system thing. So total amount, let's just say we spent 1,000 on airfare. And so again, in the memo, like in Ariba, you can change the label of the expense items. So we're going to put in round trip to London And we flew, I don't believe Alaska flies to London. So we're going to put in an airline that I'm pretty sure does, Delta. And so you'll have to fill in the airline, put arrival date. Think about it this way. Arrival date being the day you arrive at the location. So the arrival date in London. And I'm not going to be realistic here. I know that it will take a while to get there. We're just going to say I arrived and left the days of the business travel here. It'll ask you the class of service. It is a system limitation that there's all the classes of cards. Just find the class. If it says class, that's airline related. We flew economy, and our destination is London. So just kind of take a top-down approach here. Fill in what's at the top, go down to the bottom, and then we will attach the itemized airfare itinerary, which will tell us how much was paid in taxes and whatnot. And we'll click receipt included to show that the receipt was included. I believe if you don't click this, Workday will just keep spamming you and reminding you to attach the receipt. And one thing, I'm sure this question is in the chat somewhere, I haven't looked, but this billable box, this is an out of scope item. I remind you, Workday is a cloud-based system. We're not the only ones in this, so we have to use the same tool that everyone else uses, which includes other universities like our mortal rivals, WSU. But we didn't pay to use this, so this is just a box that's there. We can't remove it because it's cloud. Ignore it. I recommend not clicking it. I'm not sure if it does anything. It might break it, it might not. Let's just leave it alone, shall we? So now we've done our expense item for airfare. And at this point, you can either add the attachment for the receipt right here within the expense line itself, or you can add it on the attachments tab, which is, if you remember Ariba, this is the same thing as adding an expense item to, or adding an attachment to the expense item, or attaching it to the entire expense report. All right, next, we're going to go ahead and click add another expense item, and we're going to do lodging. So expense item group, meals lodging, lodging per diem, foreign. Make sure to click the correct location type of per diem, and otherwise it'll give you some problems and the per diem rates won't populate. So we're doing foreign again because that's one of the ones that is in here. So this will require you to add the hotel, which is new. So one thing to note before we start, so I'm gonna add the memo here, London hotel. So the total amount we recommend, so ideally, when you're actually making one of these, you'll have the folio, right? You'll know how much was spent in total. That is what you will put here. Now, I don't have a folio in front of me. Maybe in the future we can start doing that. Oh yeah, I can slow down. Maybe in the future we can start doing a folio, but like having a folio on this training, but that is not today. So in this expense line, just put the total amount that is to be paid. So we don't have that today, so we're not going to do that. We're going to itemize it first and then fill this out. So go fill in your hotel first and foremost, because this will drive the rest. So let's think of a realistically, what kind of hotel would be over there in London? And you might be seeing this list and think, oh, what if I don't find the hotel that I want? So in that case, you would type other, and then you just do that. So, okay, well, I'm just gonna pick one. Let's say we stayed at the Four Seasons. Whether or not there is one in London, I don't know. Doesn't matter. And then arrival date. So I know this says arrival date and departure date. That's just it's just Workday terminology. It's just how it is. Think about it in the way of the beginning day of per diem and the end of the day that they're claiming the per diem. So we're going to do 10 of the 14th of July. And oh wait, let's just pretend. Let's pretend it's the future right now. Oh wait, I have to go even further. Let's pretend it's the future right now. You'll see why I'm doing this. Like I mentioned, spend authorizations will be created for advanced travel. And now we're making the expense report. So let's just pretend the travel ended. All right, so from here, you're going to go in and begin to itemize your total amount that you would have put in there. So we're going to do daily expenses, edit, and this is where we will add all the daily expenses. So you want to type in the destination and find the specific one. So London, UK. Confirm the number of nights, and then you'll itemize out how much it is. Now, I'll show you how to go about it, but one thing how to go about per diem, but one thing I want to note is that for foreign per diem, we lump in the per diem rate lumps in tax and room rate. However, that is not the case for domestic per diem. So when you do domestic per diem, it'll automatically create this other box called room tax, which is where you would put the daily tax. So notice how I just did that. So there's this line here, and then there's an add. We're going to itemize within the expense item itself. So from here, you could add other expenses that are included, like laundry. But first, let's just do the per diem right here. So I think I'll show you how it looks to go over per diem. Let's do a ridiculous amount, $600. And let's have it trigger. So it triggered some errors here. So as you can see, this is the error for what it looks like when you exceed per diem. So enter an amount for room rate foreign on 6/26/23 that's less than or equal to $353 US per unit of confirmed number of nights. So essentially, this is the per diem rate right here, and this is how much we exceeded it. So what you would need to do is you would need to then reduce the daily rate in the room rate, the original room rate expense, to the per diem rate, so 353. And the extra amount, the 247, we're going to do per diem overage, lodging per diem overage. And then we will add the amount that we went over by. So 247. We went over per diem by 247. And that is what we will put in this box. And we will, again, put the same number of nights and it'll populate. And down here in the memo box for the lodging per diem overage is where you will need to put in what expense, what per diem exception you are claiming. So that will be the per diem exceptions from our website, specifically the ones on this page. Exceptions to per diem. So conference hotel, lower cost overall, or comparative advantage, and suite required, special event disaster. The works. So we're going to do conference hotel. And when you claim one of these, like in Workday, we will also require you to put the actual documentation to claim it on there. So let's pretend I'm going to put the conference location documentation on there, and I qualify for that. And at this same time, if you don't have a memo or you don't have a justification, this is where you could just change the resource just for this amount to a discretionary work tag. So now real quick, we'll do one more thing. Since we're going to show how to do car rentals, let's say I did parking. I had to park my car rental. And you can also itemize days of parking within the expense item for lodging per diem itself. This will not apply to the per diem, just the room rate one. So let's just say parking was $10 and for 4 days, and it'll fill it in. And so total we spent $24.40, and that's what we'll put in the total amount here. And as you can see, it has now reduced the remaining amount that we have left to itemize to 0 out of $24.40. So initially, you'll type in the total amount. It'll say remaining amount to itemize $24.40 out of $24.40. And then as you slowly itemize all the expenses out, that'll reduce. Okay, so next let's do meals. And this should be fairly simple. We'll go to business travel, meals, lodging, meal per diem, foreign. It'll type in the instructions for meal per diem, and you'll type in a memo, not required, recommended. And so think about this. Okay, I know I keep saying this, but this is, maybe we'll work on this one day, but I don't think they'll let us change this at go live at this point. Think about this as just the start time, start date, start time, and end date, end time to per diem. So let's say, we're not changing when travelers are eligible to claim per diem. So technically, the moment they leave the home to go to go travel or work to go travel, that's when they enter travel status. So as you can see, that's right here. Traveler status begins when the traveler leaves their official duty station / residence. This will be here for your reference. So I left my duty station. What did I do? 26th and returned 30th. And I left at 7 a.m. and I returned at 9 p.m. I was gone a while. So then it calculates the number of days. So it uses the start and end times to determine how much per diem I get for those days. And destination, again, we're just going to type in London, and we're going to do London, UK. And as you can see, then it fills in all the nice little per diem rates and gives me my money. So I'm going to click view details. And so let's say on the 28th of my business travel, I had a provided meal. It was dinner. So I would click dinner provided this day. And we see it reduces the total amount by the amount that is for per diem, for dinner per diem, and so forth. And if you do them all, it reduces it to no per diem. So we're just going to do that. And in the memo, dinner provided by conference. Gone are the days of changing it to 0 manually. And as you can see, now it updates the total amount. And then meal per diem foreign, we're done there. So, okay. So now we're going to add a car rental. And then we'll get to questions after 2 more. So car rental. It was, we did 1 car rental. I guess in here, you could do it by daily rate. And maybe we will decide on whether we will mandate a certain way to do it. But for the sake of today, to be simple, and I believe in Ariba, you didn't type in a daily rate, if I remember correctly. So we're going to say my car rental was $200. And I rented from Avis, and I rented a full-size car. And I would attach my final rental agreement, and that's it. Now we will do a line of mileage. Again, keep adding expense items the same way and typing them in the same way. And instead of quantity, just think about this as the number of miles. So let's just say I'm claiming 20 miles. Normally, we would do 10 miles to SeaTac, 10 miles back if I drove, and then attach the round trip documentation. And that is still required. However, in the interest of, I see the questions bunching up. In the interest of just, getting through this, we'll just do it this way. So I drove 20 miles for my trip with my own vehicle, so I get $11. And let's just say it's my back and forth SeaTac home, and I included my receipt. All right, so that's good for me. And lastly, I took an Uber or a British Uber, or one of those black taxi things. So rideshare, I believe we requested them to change this to car service, so that'll probably be updated in the actual production tenant. But for now, rideshare is what it is. So we're going to click rideshare. And we're going to, let's see. So we did one rideshare. We did it for, it was, I don't know, $15. And then the entire time as I do this, I would be adding the receipts either here or in the attachments tab on here. And it would do that. As you can see, we have far exceeded our spend authorization amount. That's quite all right. That'll probably happen more often than not, to be honest with you, but it will help with reporting purposes. And so we're going to give it one last look over. So rideshare 15 on mileage, blah, blah, blah. As you can see, it adds my little notes, my memos down there. And so I have some options here. I can submit, I can save this for later, or I can close it. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to submit it. So we click submit. And as you can see now, it prompts me to complete this questionnaire. If you remember from Ariba, this is something that you filled out in the very beginning. Now you're going to be filling out afterwards. Yeah, it's another fun Workday quirk. So now answer these questions, pretty self-explanatory. London, UK, it's where I traveled for business. Now here is something that we will be changing when we get the chance. What was your departure date? What was your return date? Think about this as more, what was your business start date and your business end date? Because then, and to make this make sense, it'll relate to how we do personal time here. So departure date is, so I think I did, the 26th and then the 30th. So these are the days that my business travel started and ended. Now, if I took personal time, I would then click yes, and I would say the days that I took personal time, which would ideally be outside of that. So my business travel ended on the 30th. However, I stayed in London until the 11th on personal time. And then I would add my comparison and all that fun stuff. So again, think about this departure on the questionnaire. After completing this, think about the departure and return dates as business travel start dates and business travel end dates. So for the purposes of today, I'm going to say I didn't do personal time. I will now submit the questionnaire and it will route my expense report to the cost center manager. So now the cost center manager, I'm pretty sure is Vincent again. So let's go ahead and figure out how to find our expense reports and track them. So every time that something happens on your expense report, say someone, say if you're not doing not doing this for yourself, but you're the traveler and you want to keep tabs, then you would you can it'll show up in your notifications or your inbox what's going on with your expense report. As you can see here, I see Eric Shaker has made a lovely expense report. Bravo, Eric. And so I'll do what Vincent did, basically. Oh, looks like Eric is his grant manager, so that provided his automatic approval and his routed to me for expense partner approval. I'll just go ahead and approve that. So Eric's wonderful expense report was approved. So now to find my expense report, though, the one that we just made, we want to go to the expenses, and we should find it in recent expense reports unless we make a bunch of them. But if you typically people travel one at a time. So if you don't find it there, you can also do view expense reports, and you'll want to do, I recommend clicking all of them in case you don't know what the status is. Click OK. Make sure that the dates are within the day that you submitted the expense report. And as you can see, there's the expense report that I just submitted. And once it's paid, the status here will change to paid, because this is not the production tenant and there's no settlement specialist or nothing's getting paid. It's not going to show that on this report, but it will show that in the production tenant. So now to find out where this is at and see who's holding it up, I can click on the magnifying glass icon to the left, and it brings me to view my expense report. So this is what we just did. And to view the approval flow, it'll tell you the status of it. So who it's waiting on the cost center manager. Now to specifically see who that is, we can click business purpose, and then we can see everything that happens. So basically this is the history and then also the future history, like in Ariba. So this is going to need the cost center manager approval. So ideally all expense reports after being submitted should go through a compliance approval by the shared environment expense specialist, and then depending on whether or not a spend authorization was created and approved and made, and whether or not it was exceeded, it may go to the cost center manager, which is the funding approver. And then depending on any high risk flags on the actual expense report itself, it'll go to us, the travel office. We have a list of the flags on our website, and those will be essentially the same as in the current state, except for the non-employee component, but we'll get to that. So real quick, I'll just go ahead and become Vincent once again and approve my expense report because I exceeded my spend authorization. So, okay, spend authorization, approve. He thinks it looks good. He approves. And next, it goes to the expense partner. I believe this is honestly a glitch right now because I clicked yes to the personal time. So I think this tenant of Workday just tacks on. Oh, it's crashing for me. I think it just tacks on the expense partner approval regardless of whether or not it stays clicked yes or not. But once Workday responds to me, I'll become myself again. And since I'm an expense partner, expense partner is just travel office, I'm going to approve my expense report. Success, event approved. And so now when I look at the business process, the status will change to, oh wait, yeah, I'll go back to it. So now when I go to the expense report, it'll say status approved. And once it is paid, it'll say status paid. Business process, you can see it was paid. Now, one thing real quick before we take questions, create spend authorization. So one thing I failed to mention at the spend authorization is where you can change your payment type. So if you're claiming a field advance, this is where you could do the reloadable bank card, but this is not a field advance class, and field advances, again, are different than per diem advances. So in this case, if you wanted to check or if your direct deposit wasn't set up, you can click this and then it will default to your payment address in your employee profile for the check. Anyway, all right. Let's take a few questions and then we will touch on the non-employee reimbursement process and then take more questions. So I see there's a lot of questions. We're going to start from the top. Unless there's any pressing ones you think I should answer first, Sam.
Overall, just based on the feedback from the questions, it's just to slow down a little bit. And then we also, or they would also like to see possibly if we have time later or just really quick to go over like lodging again and maybe airfare one more time. As some were just catching up or coming in late per se.
Of course.
But yeah, you can go ahead and start from the top for now.
Okay, so Mary says, what would happen if you did not put it in as an estimate? I assume that means if you didn't do a spend authorization, if you don't do a spend authorization, then you could still do an expense report. It would just not be pre-encumbered on the budget, and your expense report would route for funding approval afterwards. That's about it. If you mean, if you try to put in expenses on the spend authorization, I'm not sure it would let you submit it. Ideally not. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure what would happen. I don't think it would pay like a normal expense report. Mary also asks, is there a method to obtain a supervisor approval if they're not the cost center manager? So, all right. So on ad hoc approvals, we no longer have ad hoc approval like we did, true ad hoc approval like we did in Ariba. We can add approvers to our expense reports, I believe, but only if they're already on the cost center. So if there's another approver that's already existing on the cost center, you can add them to the approval flow. Otherwise, if your supervisor is not on there, you cannot add them to the approval flow. I believe for the executive office, there is a different workaround. And if you have questions on the executive office method of it, I'm not knowledgeable on that. So I recommend you ask FT. So, okay, Angie says, when estimating the spend authorization estimate, do we include airfare that's already been purchased on a CTA card? You do not, no, you would not include airfare that's already been purchased on a CTA card. The purpose of the spend authorization is really to pre-encumber the funds. So if you add expenses that are paid on a CTA to a spend authorization, then it would double book the budget essentially. So you would have the expense that you already incurred on the CTA plus the pre-booking of the expense from the spend authorization, which may throw off budgeting estimates. So I don't recommend doing that. Akram says, can the approver, in this case, Vincent, change the funding source? I don't believe approvers cannot change spend authorizations or expense reports. If they want to change, they can click the send back and specifically send it back to someone and add a note to change the spend authorization, but they cannot themselves do it. Savina asks, what does it look like when the spend authorization is encumbered? So what it looks like is it will essentially, in the future version of MyFD, which I can't speak to because I haven't seen it either. I've just seen this part. But in the future version of MyFD type reports for your cost center and the work tags, it will show the expense as hitting the budget essentially. So hitting the work tag. So when you encumber the funds with the spend authorization, it'll essentially show like a pending charge, like on a credit card, I believe. And Mary asked about School of Medicine employees filling out, and Erica added a budget to actuals link, which is excellent. Thank you, Erica. That is what I would add. Mary says, if the receipt does not have the flight info, just the amount, do we need to fill out the item detail section? So remember, for airfare, we require an itemized airfare itinerary. So if you do not have the flight info, you will need to find a receipt that does, otherwise it will be considered to be outside of policy. You would not itemize for airfare, just as there's no like airfare tax like there is for room rate. So you would just put in the total. And if you don't have an itemized receipt in the current state, we would deny those, and we will continue to in the future state. Dennis says, is there a return/go back button in the view report UI? I find it is difficult to switch from viewing a report from the list and go back to the list once I am done with the report. In the view report UI. Oh, I think he was talking about this. Yeah. I think the closest thing we get to return and go back is cancel, but I believe there should be an arrow. Let me double check this real quick. Well, let's just do that. Oh, looks like no. Yeah, I agree with you. That's it's a little difficult. I think you have to just go back to the expenses from the app. Because if you click find expense reports, it'll populate something else. Molly asks, what if hotel charges a variable rate for the nights? That's a good question, and I see it asked a lot. So if there's a variable rate, oh, whoops, didn't mean to finish answering it. If there's a variable rate, you can either make new expense items, or you can just average them like you do now in Ariba. Essentially the same thing. It should work. Averaging, believe I did that math once and it did work. Belinda asks, how do you enter lodging if the cost is different for different days and some nights over per diem and some are not? Currently, we enter this as separate line items. So as it's the same conference, same question, kind of different aspect of it. So think about it this way. If the average is over the conference rate, and so long as the employee gets paid the same, if the average is over the conference rate or the per diem rate, you will need some sort of exception. If only one day is over the per diem rate, then you'll need an exception for that one day. So essentially, either way, you'll have to add an exception. And so you can either do it as an average, or you can do it as separate line items and add the exception for each one. It really is preference. Alexander says the same thing. Julie, I hope that is to your liking. Julie asks, is there a job aid, quick reference guide for creating expense reports with a crosswalk between current state Ariba and Workday for things like lodging per diem overages? These are significant changes that it will take some time to adapt to. Now, that would have been great if they would have created that, but I don't believe there is one. There is a job aid that talks about the future state, but there is not a job aid that does a crosswalk. If you want that, I recommend you come back to our class for a refresher, because that's sort of the thing that we do. But yes, I agree with you. These are some significant changes that will take some time to adapt to. And, we're all in it together. Sam and I will also be trying to adapt. Sam, how are we on time? We have until like 12, right?
Yes.
All right. Do we know if the destination lists will be as comprehensive as they were in Ariba at Go Live? For example, if someone didn't stay in a city that is listed for a rate loaded, if they go county by county or country by general rate. So Alicia, that's a good question. And essentially, yes, we'll have the same locations as we did in Ariba because it'll be the same per diem file. There will be others. There will be other rates. There will be county rates. And yeah, the only difficult thing is for the other rates, you will have to type in other in brackets and you'll have to be a little specific with it to get it to pull up. Okay, so Lena says, what if the daily room rates are different? Do we need to, yeah. I think also to do the different daily rates, and bear with me, we're all learning this process together. To do it, now that I think about it, another way you could do it theoretically is you should be able to itemize, no, not that one. You should be able to itemize different rates in one lodging per diem. Let me double check this, because that may be preferable for some. So daily expenses, check-in date. Oh, you will not be able to, because I don't think it gives you the option to change the date. Oh yeah, you could. So another way that you could do variable rates is you could add more and you could change the check-in date before clicking enter. So one way you could do that, check-in date. So let's say, this one is 7/3 to 7/4. This one I could have the check-in date be 7/5 and then type room rate foreign, and then put in the number of nights. So from 7/5 to 7/9, it's this rate and so forth. So say it was this way for those days and this way for these days. I think 2, right? So 2 to 5. Yeah. So say, from 7/3 to 7/4, it's this $5. You could do it this way. You could do one room rate, and then you could do another room rate, 7/4, 7/10, or 7/5 to 7/9, and just do it that way. Or you could average. That's really a preference one. Kristen Anderson asks, we'll be able to add specific amounts. Kristen, specific amounts for which one? You can chat, you can Teams that to us if you want, or chat. You can use the chat to talk to me about that. Kristen will get back to you. Belinda says, can you still claim less on meal per diem? I think the way we're going about meal per diem is if I assume you mean the override. So let's see. I don't think they have that. Sam, do you remember how that? I swear there was like an override meal per diem line, right?
I believe based on previous conversation, that was going to be added after go live. Just want to let
Hmm.
everyone know we were talking about this and we did mention this with the FT design team, but I believe because we're so, or because it is so late in the game per se, they're only able to work on this request after go live, but it is in progress as a line, as an expense item for the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. So essentially, if the saying what kind of meals were claimed on an expense report is not specific enough, then soon we will have something. What you will do until it is built, Eric, is you can manually change the dates of your per diem, and you can say that certain rates, certain amounts are claimed, or certain meals are provided. You just got to bear with us until that is built. That was not our decision. How do you note that a meal was provided by the conference? You can add it in the memo field on the itemization line. Alexander asks, is there any way to change the reimbursement amount to less than the maximum per diem amount for meal? Oh, this is the same question. Hopefully we can get this up and running as soon as possible. Dan Olson, I hope that the mileage reimbursement, yeah, that's what he meant. Okay. What if the car rental rate is different each day? Lena, you can just add the total amount. You will need to add the final rental agreement anyway. But I think in Ariba, all it asks is the total amount currently too. So Mayurla says, what about currency conversions for foreign travel? What documentation is required? Oh, and that's a great question. I meant to touch on that. I know our trip was for London, so, and I was putting everything in dollars. So you will just need the same currency conversion documentation as was required in Ariba. So the policy isn't changing there. So essentially, you can just go to a website like Oanda and either convert every expense, or if there's too many expenses, you can just do one conversion. Where do we have that? You can just do one conversion for either the first day or the last day and enter it that way. You can find this on our website for future reference. I'll type this answer here. Lynn Mathis says, and Ivory concurs, if rideshare is less than $75, do we have to attach a receipt? Great question. And no, you do not. However, it still has to be within policy. And if you click rideshare, you will notice it says a receipt is not required if the car service is less than $75. And you can also find this on our website in the receipts page, just above foreign currency conversion. Zoe Cool has a similar question. Yes, please attach the conversions as a PDF. And yes, you would need to convert from Great British Pound. And again, to emphasize, it can be either using a currency conversion from the first or the last day of travel, or each day. Additionally, if travelers can provide a credit card statement showing the expenses hitting their card in US dollars, that also works. We've done that one before. And Mary, to answer your question, no, I believe we can only pay US dollars in the expense report module. And that's a similar question. All right. Okay, I think this is a good point to Oh yeah, Mary, some departments do require receipts. Okay, big caveat to everything that we talk about in all of our everything we talk about. Note that department policy is always able to be stricter than our general travel policies due to funding or compliance concerns. So I know we have certain policies that are pretty lax, and that's not the same for all departments. So yes, please remember to check with your department, with your admins for any department policies that you may need to follow, as those are also required. So anyway, let's go ahead and touch on the unfortunate one, the non-employee travel. So the expense module currently is only for employees. So employees are defined as people who are paid by UW and have a Workday profile. So students will only count as employees and be able to use the expense support module if they are student employees. If not, then all non-employees will be going through a different module, which we call miscellaneous payments, and is akin to the current state version of P2I, payment to individuals. So I will show you how to process one of those, but real quick. So those of you who know P2I, the current state, know that P2Is are taxable. So they are 1099 reportable, and more often than not, I believe they are reported. I'm not too knowledgeable about P2I specifically. However, don't be alarmed, because we were alarmed about this and we did not want all non-employees to be taxed on non-taxable travel. So we partnered with FT and we co-opted one of the forms that we had existing, and we devised a way that we can provide itemization on non-travel, non-employee expense report or non-employee reimbursement in a way that we can review them for compliance and not tax them and have them non-tax. So if you have non-employees traveling, which includes everyone who does not hold an employee status in Workday, whether staff, faculty, or student employee, will have to fill out this form and attach the miscellaneous payment. You can find this form on our website, and we will be updating it as as people use it and as needs evolve. And hopefully one day we can update a Workday to not have to use this form. But essentially we still need itemization for non-employees if they're non to be taxed and not paid as a lump sum. So for UW students, faculty, staff candidates, or guest visitors who want to claim a non-taxable travel reimbursement, you'll have to fill out this form. And this form is pretty self-explanatory. I know it's not as robust as filling out an expense report. We're not too happy about this. We would ideally like all travelers to go through the expense report module and be treated the same. But with how big this project has been and how many limitations we have at this time, they were not able to get this into scope for at Go Live. So for all non-employees, they'll have to fill out this form. Essentially, fill out the name, home, city, state, date submitted, box number, indicate what kind of traveler they are, indicate the EU GDPR status, whether or not they're citizens, and what kind of visas they have. And essentially, so after this is filled out, then all of the receipts will still be required in addition to this. So the folio and airfare receipt will need to be attached. And essentially you'll just go in and start adding the amounts on the right side here, and they will start to populate. And this total is what you will put in the miscellaneous payment. And Erica says, can I confirm if the non-employee travel form is in a fixed location online so we can change our websites to link to it? And yes, Erica, we have thought of this. We will make sure to keep this form always living on our page down here, ideally with the same link. And thank you for Sam for linking that. We want to not make sure to not break your forums. We want to make this as smooth as possible for all parties, including ourselves. And so, yeah, we're going to go through how this is going to work, and we will adjust this form as needed. But so anyway, yeah, this will live on our website, same place. This will need to be attached to every miscellaneous payment for non-employee travel if it is to not be taxed. All right. So without further ado, let's see what I'm talking about. So here you would type create miscellaneous payment request. So first you have to create the payee, but I believe that if you have this saved to a shortcut, if you have the miscellaneous payment request saved, you can create the payee within this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a quick miscellaneous payment. The actual process of processing miscellaneous payment is a lot simpler because you don't need, essentially you'll be processing this as a lump sum payment. And the only way that it'll not be taxed is by clicking the right spend category and attaching this so that we can itemize it. Sam and I, to make sure that they're not taxed, we'll be reviewing every non-employee travel reimbursement in the miscellaneous payment module. We do not do this now. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it possible, at a good point within the next 10 minutes or so, if we could take a little bit of a break so people can mentally
yes, quick
absorb
bio break
the information
and mental break. Yeah, okay. Let's take I think we're almost at 11. We have until 12. Let's take 10. Is that all right, Sam? You think 10?
Yeah, I think that would work.
So everyone, please come back at 10:58, and we'll start from miscellaneous payments. Zoom the recording. Okay. So first and foremost, for non-employee travel, this form, I want to emphasize something. If you don't want the reimbursement to be taxed as income, this form has to be filled out. And this process will have to be followed. If this form is not attached, we will ask you to attach it and fill it out, or we will ask you to change the expense item to the taxable one. And I'll show you what I mean there. But essentially, bottom line, if this form is not attached, all right, how about I'll put it this way. Bottom line, the only way for a non-employee travel reimbursement, no matter what kind of travel reimbursement it is for a non-employee, to be non-taxed, this form will have to be attached. I cannot say that it is perfect. I wish I could. Nothing can replace the robustness of a actual expense system, but it'll have to do. for now. But essentially, again, if this is not attached, we cannot process it non-taxable. Okay, so create miscellaneous payment request. So essentially, first you'll have to create the payee. So we'll click this payee icon or the radio icon. If you've already paid them or made a payee for them, you won't have to create another one unless you made it as a one-time payee. So to show you the whole process, we'll make a payee here. So you would click create payee, and then you would type in their name. And there is a job aid for this process that will go into much more detail as it goes into detail for all of the entire miscellaneous payment process altogether. And let me pull it up because this process is a little tricky. Okay, so the process is APJ. The job aid for this one is APJ01. And Sam, correct me if I am wrong, but I believe it is on our website, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. We have this job aid. Looks like this attached on our website to help you. I highly recommend you reference this. It'll be a lot easier to follow than checking this recording to show you how to create the proper fields. Because there's a lot of fields here that they just labeled miscellaneous field 1, 2 through 9, and then they mean specific things. So in this case, we're gonna kind of follow this together. So we've started the miscellaneous payment request process. We're creating the miscellaneous payee. We're gonna enter the payee name, which is I guess I entered myself. I can enter my brother. He goes by Willie. So we'll enter him. I'm gonna uncheck single use. If you click single use payee, I believe that it will delete the payee profile after you create the miscellaneous payment for the payee. So only click that if you want that to happen. And so then you would click the type of miscellaneous payee. I believe for us, we want you clicking, the most relevant one. So if they are not a foreign national, please don't click that. So I think we would do claimant. Does it have a guide to that? Single use payee type. Okay. No, it does not. Hopefully we can get more guidance from Workday about that, unless, Sam, do you have any note on what the difference would be between claimant and domestic payee?
I believe it would only be if someone is like claiming, like if a non-employee claimed expenses on behalf of someone else, that's the only reason you would use domestic claimant. But if it's just domestic payee and their own travel, it's that.
Okay.
So
So we'll do domestic payee. That way we don't need to worry about the whole foreign national thing, which we'll talk about it. We'll touch on it. So you'll want to add as much contact information as they're comfortable with, ideally at least email and address. I believe we'll need the address to send the check. Tax information. I believe this will need to be, yeah, so you would need to add, oh, hi, Teresa. So we'll get the tax information, 1099. This will require you to add the address and all the fun stuff. Let's see if we can leave this blank. Nope. Quick reference guide. So add other okay. So we'll add all the other details for the payee under their respective tabs, contact information. Oh yes. So we'll need the payee address for 1099 tax reporting and mailing checks, and a telephone number for Zelle payments. So address. Ooh, I don't want to give that one out today. Name. Where's that one? We're gonna go ahead and try to leave this blank because I don't have anyone's address on hand that I can put in for this, or tax information. This gets into more sensitive information. So please refer to this quick reference guide for the specifics on this. But we have created my brother as the payee, so we're going to click OK. Okay, so now it's going to require that. Great. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 Street. Yeah, okay. So we'll enter the information. Let's say he's just okay. So enter their information. Effective date, you should be able to just keep that the same. Current date. Apartment 1. And so use for billing, remit to, shipping. So this is the address for checks. And we're going to click OK. And now we are in the create miscellaneous payment request. So now we're going to start filling this out. So we want to fill out the payment type, which in this case, we have some options. I don't believe direct deposit works for this kind of payment for non-employees. So we're going to choose check, but this is where you could choose wire, foreign currency wire. We can't answer specifics about this today, as this is a field not managed by us. We're just showing you the non-employee travel portion of it. So check request category. Because it is travel, we choose non-employee travel. And we can ignore handling code and all that. Miscellaneous fields, I believe we need to add at least one of these. So if we are going to have the check sent, if we add a handling code, so this is where you can have the check sent to your office for the traveler to then pick up if they don't want to provide an address for whatever reason. You could do hold campus, and then in miscellaneous field 7, you would input the campus delivery, the campus mailbox number to send the check. But if you want them to just receive a check at their address stated, this step is not required. Again, highly recommend you download and reference this quick reference guide for miscellaneous payments if you have not already. This will save your bacon when making these. So we enter the business justification in the memo. So Seattle conference travel. And then we go to the lines, and now we'll begin to add the actual lines themselves. I believe there's one that we need to add. Miscellaneous field 1 is required for all miscellaneous payment requests. So essentially, we need to enter the contact name of a UW employee for us or the tax office or accounts payable to contact in case there's any need for it. In this case, since it's my brother, let's say it's me. I'm the contact. And then miscellaneous fields 2 through 6 are required for all non or foreign nationals, which we will ignore for today since my brother is a citizen. So lines, we just want to do spend category. Okay, so one thing I want to mention to y'all. So all the spend categories are available here. You'll notice even some per diem ones, we don't want you using these unless you want it to be taxed. So if this non-employee travel reimbursement is to not be taxed, there is only one expense category, one spend category to be used. And in this case, we recommend you refer to the miscellaneous payment request for non-UW employee travel. portion of the quick reference guide where it will tell you. So spend categories for non-UW employee travel. And this is very key, very critical here. You need to add spend category 2566 when submitting a miscellaneous payment request for travel that falls within the accountable plan. And this one will not be 1099 reportable and will route to us, the travel office, to review. If you choose any other spend category, including this one, for stuff that falls out of the accountable plan, it will not route to us and it will be 1099 reportable, and the traveler will most likely receive a 1099 at the end of the year and a 1042 if they are foreign national. Now, some of you may be asking, what is the UW accountable plan? This is just how we define our policies. So when we think about keeping things within policy, we think about keeping things within our UW accountable plan. So we want to make sure that everything stays within policy set forth by all the places that Sam mentioned in the last training, the Washington State Office of Financial Management, the GSA, and the federal government, any other federal agency that may be influencing your travel. So that is what the accountable plan means. It just means that the travel is within policy. So again, if you want the non-employee travel reimbursement to not be taxed, you have to enter it on the expense. You have to enter the expense line as a lump sum. So we're going to add the entire amount that they get in this line, and we have to choose the spend category SC2566 non-employee travel. Notice that this one does not have 1099, so that means it is not 1099 reportable unless we reject it. So, okay, now that I think about it, if I remember correctly, this module did not have this spend category loaded, which is excellent. So we're going to go ahead and go to a different type of Workday that I know does, and apologies for this. We're kind of all over the place, but come July 6th, it will all be in one place. So I don't believe everyone will have access to this version. I think, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the UAT tenant, right?
Yes. So for those who were invited to do user acceptance testing, this will be available to you. If you weren't, unfortunately, there'll be no access.
However, the production tenant come July 6th will have everything that we have mentioned, as well as some updates. But so if you have UW access to UW 13, you can follow along. If not, I recommend you pay close attention. So I'm going to go through the process again. So payee, we're going to create the payee. It's going to bring us to create the payee, and I'm going to do my brother once again as a single use domestic payee. His address 1234 Street, apartment 1, Seattle, Washington 98105. This will be the primary address used for billing, remit to, and shipping. And we're going to ignore all the tax information because we don't want to, we are not the ones to get into taxes today. Oh, we got an error. Oh, whoops. We want to choose the correct state, which is Washington. Yep. And now we will create. All right. Sorry. We'll create the miscellaneous payment for my brother, Willie brother. Now let's just move on. So check is the payment type, request category, non-employee travel. And we're gonna not put a handling code on this. And we're gonna go ahead and put in our spend category that is non-taxable, which is non-employee travel SC2566. You can also, if you know it, type it in and it will come up and autofill in. So we recommend you do quantity 1, extended amount. Okay, so now this is key. Like I mentioned, essentially you're going to be filling out this miscellaneous payment as if it is a lump sum. However, you'll have to itemize everything within our non-UW employee travel expense reimbursement claim form. So you will take the total that you get here and you will fill it in here. So let's just say that all of that added up to a clean $1,000. And then in the attachments, we will add the non-UW claim form in the attachments, as well as all of the required documentation, which may be things like airfare, if that is applicable, or lodging folio, all the receipts that are required, which will be, the form will guide you to attach. So please make sure you read what the form is asking carefully and then only check things if you have them, as we will be reviewing every single one of these. So now we're going to add the cost center and we're going to add the resource, which should drive everything. So we're going to again do the same resource we were doing earlier, RS 100,000, and it will drive our work tags. And we're going to do our cost center, active cost center by cost center hierarchy. We're going to do us, basically. I think we can just type in. So procurement services, that's us, and it drives the rest of our work tags. If there are any grants applicable, then you would apply those. Please reference the budget to actuals guide that FT is published or will publish for questions on that. Now, if you want to override this amount for any reason, you can put something in the control total amount, but for the memo, we're just going to put travel to Seattle for UW conference. And we are going to, you can essentially ignore everything. Just all we need is the spend category, the amount, the work tags, and then we will need the form from our website attached along with all of the other receipts. And then we would go ahead and we'd submit it and see what errors we got. Oh, I need the miscellaneous field 1, which is the UW contact, which is me. And then now we will submit. And it gives us another error. Oh, an attachment is required. So this is where we will attach our attachment. You can drag and drop files, which I love. So we're going to just attach the blank form. It's uploaded. And then this is where you would attach all the other forms that are required. And then you would hit submit. And then if all else it goes well, it'll show you this screen and you can see the business process and it'll tell you what's up next. So approval by cost center manager. So this will go to cost center manager approval and also expense partner approval, which is us. Looks like it, because it's me, it automatically approved it. And then it would route for funding approval, which in this case would be Vincent again. So now I'm gonna just go ahead and, oh, I don't have proxy access in this tenant. Okay. So let's just pretend that I then became Vincent and approved this miscellaneous payment. And then eventually, once the business process was complete, Willie, my brother, would receive a payment type check on the address that was on file of 1234 Street, apartment 1. And that is how you do a non-employee travel reimbursement. And now we will take questions. So we have about 40 minutes. We'll try to get through all the questions. And I imagine there's a lot. Okay. So some things that I think maybe maybe apply to a bunch of questions that I'm now seeing here. So whether or not who fills out the form. So I don't believe this form is locked, but let me double. It is not locked behind a net ID. So theoretically, your non-employee traveler could download the form and fill it out themselves, or you can fill it out for them and help them out. Honestly, I recommend, this is opinion of me, Renee. I recommend you fill it out with them or for them. That way you can make sure to guide them correctly how to fill it out and attach the correct attachments. And then upload that, as it'll need to be you creating the miscellaneous payment. Because of their non-employee status, they will not have access to Workday, which is, the crux of why we're doing this. All right, so let's go to the top here. Michael Chase says, is there a way to withdraw a submitted expense report before it is approved? I believe you can. So you would do expenses, you would do view, and do expense report status in progress. And let's see if one comes up. All right, one does not come up. Oh, wait. So let's go back to the version of Workday where I do have stuff in progress. And hopefully it lets me. Okay, it signed me out. Sorry. Bear with me here. All right. So from here, to withdraw an expense report, you would pull up the report here. Or let's see. Did I have any expense lines? I'm gonna add one expense line to this real quick and just get it submitted. Oh, and someone mentioned that this is the incorrect rate, and yeah, it is. The current rate is higher than that, I believe. It's on our website, but this is just the UW tenant. It does not have the complete data. The production tenant come July 6th will have the correct rates automatically filling in based on the date here. So now we're just going to go ahead and so this is good, and we're going to go ahead and submit this. The memo field needs a value. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. Just kind of brute forcing my way through this to show how it looks to withdraw an expense report. Okay. So now that I have submitted this, there's a few ways that you can withdraw it before it gets approved. And essentially, so, okay, you can either go to recent expense reports and You can cancel it by clicking on the three dots right here, going to expense report, cancel, and you can also change it, or you can find it in the in progress status and essentially do the same from here. You can cancel or change. I think canceling will kill it, essentially. And then you'll have to resubmit it. So there's not a regular withdraw like there was. You can change and then I think save for later. That may be the version of it, but you can still make changes to it before it gets fully approved. So I hope that answers your question, Michael. And yes, Erica's question was answered by Kim Din correctly. And Madison asks, is there a way to add multiple approvers to a spend authorization? Our department requires approval from the administrator, associate chair, and chair. I believe only if they are already associated with that cost center. Any further questions about ad hoc approval? I recommend you forward to UW-FT. They may be able to help you better on that one. So William Schubert asks, for those of us that work with shared services for reimbursements and act as a point person with them on behalf of our faculty, we have previously submitted reimbursements on the faculty's behalf. With this transition to Workday, are faculty now responsible for creating their own expense reports, or is the point person still submitting on their behalf? I saw that as this was being created, didn't give the option to change the person we are creating this for, and I wanted to make sure. So William, if you are still here, and I see that Lena +1's him. So William and Lena, yes, you can still create expense reports on behalf of another. You will essentially just have to go a different method. So I say this, but the only real difference in the process will be getting to it and then adding the person's name. So, and first and foremost, to do this, you will need to create an expense report or spend authorization on behalf of another. You will need the approval, you will need the role of the security role of expense data entry specialist, and that will allow you to create expenses for others. So to create an expense report for a worker, for someone else, not you, you would type in create expense report or create expense, and it should just come up. And then you do create expense report for worker. Click on that. And then it gives you the option to change the pay to. I don't know if there's any worker data in here. So let's see if Sam can come up here. Oh, so dang. Nope. So there's Sam, and then we would click Sam's name, and then it would fill in her name here, and then you would just go and fill out the expense report per usual. And then once you click OK, you'll see that instead of my name or your own name, it would be the employee's name, and it'll say create expense report for worker. And you can do the same process for spend authorizations. Just create spend authorization for worker, essentially. Alexander asks if the payment will be going out as a check. Does paid occur when the check is issued or when it has been deposited? I believe paid is when the check is issued and not when it is deposited. Marissa asks, can you please email out the link to the recording today? And we will try to email out the link as soon as possible, which should be either today or tomorrow, because we'll probably have to do a little bit of editing. We want to upload this to our website, but we will get it to you as soon as possible. Okay, so Sue asks, how do you indicate a budget split for an item since there's no split button? Okay. So bear with me here. As I know it, as the process is now, there is no way to create a budget split like in Ariba. The official way to make a budget split is to submit everything on one work tag, fund, what have you, and then perform a journal to manually split it. Now, I am attending a meeting later today where someone may have figured out a way on how to do that. And if that way does work for expense reports, we will let you guys know. And hopefully there is a way, but unfortunately, that is currently the only way, because if you create multiple expense lines with the same dates for the same expenses, with just having it one expense be half on one spend category, or not spend category, one half on one work tag and the other half on another work tag, Workday will kick it back as a duplicate expense. So currently, the only way to do splits is through a manual journal afterwards. All right, Lynn Mathis asks, if you are in a department that chooses not to use the spend authorization, how do you select check as method of payment? That's a good question. I believe you would have to go into your employee profile and select that as the method. Let's see. Change preferences, account preferences, workflow. Sam, help me out here. Do you know where that is? It might not be on this version of Workday.
Which one are you looking for again?
How to change the kind of payment type for yourself.
If you're changing travel and reimbursements, you would have to do that through your personal what's it called? Payment elections. On Workday, there should be like how you get paid for, working, and then there should be a travel, I believe, under it. And that is when you will choose direct deposit or check, and then you'll obviously input that information like address, or I'll base it off your address. I believe also if you've already created an expense report for yourself under the header, after you do the initial creation, you can click on, I believe, payment method. So after you do after you submit, or not submit, go through this first section, just press OK. Yeah, you can click on that.
Oh
and
yeah,
change it.
so you can go through the header here. Let's see, allowable payment types. So yeah, check. There it is. Sweet. Thank you, Sam. So yeah, if not, you can either do it manually through this way. If not on a spend authorization, you can do it in the header here, or you can do it in your payment elections, which I don't believe are in this. Oh wait, they're right here. Payment view payment elections. Oh, don't look at that. Don't look at that. Yeah, so hope that answers your question, Lynn. Chris Pope asks, when trying to create the line item for airfare, I got an error that said I needed to provide business purpose, but I don't see anywhere to put that. Okay, so there's two things here. So either you are on UW9 and you're encountering the business purpose issue where the UW9 training tenant just doesn't recognize the correct business purposes no matter what you do, then just make sure you are noting it right, and then keep doing that in the production tenant, and you will not have that issue. But if not, then I believe you have to go. So you would do the business purpose at this part. For some reason, it's not asterisked out, even though it is required. So you would select business purpose when first creating the expense report and do business travel reimbursement. Then click OK. And see if you can change it again. So then if you go to the header and you want to change it, you can edit or add one, and you can do it there as well. Kelly Will asks, for all expenses reimbursements that have piled up during break, do you not need spend authorization? So for spend authorizations, remember they're whether or not they're required is dependent on your department or shared environment. I don't believe there is a way for the expenses that are piling up right now. I think you'll just have to do them without a spend authorization, as a lot of them will be, after the fact. And the spend authorization will not let you choose past dates. Uchi asks, how can we print out a travel expense report that includes departure and return time and date? That's a good question. Can you print out expense reports? So let's see. Approved, let's see here. So, okay. So from here, from viewing my expense report, click the three dots, expense report, print. It'll process. And then, I don't know, it's a good question. We'll see what it comes up with. Then it'll pull up the information. So it looks like you cannot pull a print of one that has specifically the expense line details, unfortunately, unless maybe you can do it in this line. Let's see. Yeah, I do not believe you can do that, unfortunately. Yeah, that is quite unfortunate. So I guess not. Okay, Kyle Yim asks, for the international travel, do we still need to calculate the foreign rates amount to US dollars amount to input in Workday? Or can we input the foreign amount and Workday will translate it to US dollars? So Workday will not translate to US dollars. Please convert them like you do now into dollars and then put them into Workday and provide the documentation of the conversion. Kelly Will asks, I am admin and often submit for others. How do I know what my own authorizations for creating reports and authorizations? Spend authorization replaces T-Rex system. Okay, so to answer your last question, spend authorization, whether or not it replaces your T-Rex system, I assume that means your method of pre-trip approval. Whether or not it replaces it will be up to your department or your shared environment. I can't say for sure. I think for some departments it will, for some it may not. So I would check with your head honchos on that, or if you want, since you're an admin, if you would like to do that yourself, decide that. But I would hazard a guess, probably not. And Sam, help me out here. Do you remember how to find what roles you have?
For one's role, you would go to your profile, I believe. If you're looking for others, you would just have to look them up and then click the little three dots, and that will see actions. And then I believe if you go down to security profile and then view
Oh.
roles. Yeah. And then just press OK.
So if you were following that, that is how you would view your roles. So I'll do that one more time. So to find what roles are assigned to you at this time, you would click on your own employee profile, view profile, click on actions, scroll down to security profile, view role assignments for worker position. And I don't think you need to click that, but I always click what position I am in. I think this is only relevant if you have multiple positions. I know that's possible for some people. And then click OK. And it brings you up to this report where it shows all the roles you have and the instances in which they are enabled. So as you can see, I do have the School of Medicine and UW Academy expense data entry specialist role. And yeah, those are the roles I have. Hope that answered your question, Kelly. Julie says, can you say that again? There's no link between a spend authorization and a CTA charge. Is that correct? I don't. So CTA charges, that's a different process, is what I was trying to say. You will, do you do it through a, Sam, you do it through you do CTA verification through an expense report, right?
Yes, you'll be doing that with the CTA verification business purpose. So it'll be separated.
Yeah, I'm not sure what reason you would use a spend authorization for CTA cards for. Maybe you can learn about that in a CTA card training. But I'm sorry, I don't know the exact answer. I saw
You can
Teresa
put in
came
the
on mute, but
personal.
I'm not sure if she was going to say something else.
I'm sorry, the question was how to do CTA verification?
She was asking if there's a link between spend authorizations and CTA charges.
No,
Yeah, there is not. Okay.
it's the
There's-
expense report, just the expense report. They're gonna pull CTA transactions from JP Morgan Chase into the expense report for you to reconcile that way.
Mhm. And training, I believe, should be coming for that one. All right. So Bridget Demoy asks, I think the airfare line item asked for arrival and departure dates. Is that the date you fly to a place and the date you return? I missed what you said. So arrival and departure, yeah, that's the date that you arrive there and then the date that you come back. Yeah. Lane Ritter says, do you need a price comparison for combined personal and official travel? Is if plane ticket is paid by department, I assume that means CTA. So, okay. So you should not, personal travel, airfare with personal travel is not allowed on a CTA. So it should not be on there. But you do always need a price comparison if it happened on there. And yeah, so please keep in mind to not book your airfare with personal travel on a CTA. If it already happened, then please obtain a price comparison. And if the traveler, if it's more expensive for their personal time, then they'll need to pay the money back. But yeah, for all other situations, yes, an airfare comparison would be required. And Kimberly Chen about averaging the hotel costs. You can, it depends on your department. Alicia said that you mentioned in this training that for variable room rates, we can average as we did in Ariba. My understanding is that was not allowed. And we had to enter each room rate change. What happens when some nights are under per diem and some are over? So I believe that depends on your own department policy, so long as the total amount and matches the folio, and we have the folio on file that meets our compliance. Whether or not your department wants that is up to your department. And so if one night is over per diem, then that night will need the justification. If the average is over per diem, it'll need the justification. If the average is not over per diem, it will not need the justification. I recommend you check with your administrators on how best you would like to go about that. T.I. Haynes says, does the spend authorization replace a purchase order? What is the updated process flow? Will the travelers still need to fill out the travel request and mileage form like before? Spend authorization is a completely different process from purchase orders. Purchase orders will still exist, and that's for all kinds of invoicing, fun stuff. I'm not too knowledgeable about that space, so I will not talk about it. but spend authorization does not replace purchase orders. The process flow for spend authorizations will just be that once they're submitted, it will route to a funding approval. And then if they are for a cash advance, it'll route to Sam and I, and then pay. And whether or not then, I assume you're asking then about your own department forms, whether or not they need to fill that out will be up to your department. Ruth Levy asks, in Ariba lodging per diem, when someone stayed over the change in per diem, we had to adjust the dates to make it work. How does this work in Workday? And I'll have you know, Ruth, it does it automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. You won't have to adjust the dates. Just put in the dates that are regular and Workday will take care of it. All right, so John Salos asks, can you do an example of airfare comparison either today or in a future workshop recording? I think we can probably save that for a policy training, but since today we want to get through the system questions, we will not do that today. But John, if you ever want, to hop on a call with us, we can walk you through that. Catherine asks, who prepares the spend authorizations for travel? They should like a more detailed version of the travel pre-authorizations we require now from people proposing travel. So you can make a travel spend authorization for yourself, or you can make one on behalf of another worker if you have the correct role, which is that of the expense data entry specialist. So however detailed they need to go is up to your department. Again, whether or not the spend authorization is used is up to your department or shared environment. However, we do recommend it as it helps with budgeting. Mary says, we can either enter a spend authorization global estimate or we can itemize a spend authorization. Is there any benefit to itemizing the spend authorization? So for spend authorizations, from what I've been told in my training, is that you should only enter the spend authorization global estimate. I don't quite know what happens if you itemize it. But you could sure try and let me know what happens. But the official process, and maybe we'll have this answer in the future once we get into the actual process of it. But maybe let me know what happens. But the official process is just do the global estimate, as that is what as far as I know is working the correct spend authorization item. Alicia asks, will we ever be using the itemize button, or is that just an aspect of Workday and that we don't need to use since lodging has the daily edit button to create the itemizations? Yeah, I think that is an aspect of Workday that is built in. For the things that you do need to itemize, they should have, like you mentioned, the lodging has the daily edit button, and that does the same thing. I think for some situations, and I can't say what because, travel is a gray area for everything, but for some situations it may be needed, but I'm not entirely sure if there will be itemization expense items for every expense like there are for lodging, since lodging is the one that really needed it. Julie, this is not a change in policy. There is no policy on this matter. This is an internal thing on whether you average it. Some departments average it now, some don't. You can average it. You can also itemize it. Depends on how your administrators want it. Marissa asks for an example or talk through key points for travel that includes personal travel. Not sure if you're planning on covering this today. We will cover this in the policy training on the 5th. We'll talk about personal travel. Michael Chase says, it is nice that the instructions list the same info from the website and links to the website. Thank you, Michael. we sure try. Catherine Calderwood says, I also have a number of expense reports waiting for processing while the system has been down. Will I have to prepare spending authorizations for all of these since they don't have them? No, but one thing to note, they will require pre-trip approval. That's already, it's already a requirement. So you should just attach the pre-trip approval form that they acquired when they first requested approval to travel. Chris Pope says when I type a memo under Chris Pope says when I type a memo under meals per diem to say which meals were provided by the conference, that does not have an impact on the amount of per diem being claimed. How do I look at itemized meals per diem? So I'll show you this again real quick. So, okay, nope. Business travel, we'll go in there. Nope, oh, crap. Lodging. So meal per diem foreign, okay. So when they're doing something, sorry, I'll just create this. Come on. All right, okay. So to do provided meals, Chris Pope, go into, after you fill out the item details, go into the travel journal, view details, and then go to the day. Notice each day will have its own expense thing like this. So go into the day that you want to be on, they had a provided meal. So say if they had a provided meal on the 13th, go in there and choose which meal they had provided. So if they had dinner provided, just click on that, and then you can add something in the specific memo field of this day, information about that. And that is how you do that. Marissa asks, will travel be offering any drop-in sessions for people with travel reimbursement questions? That is a good question, Marissa. And let me tell you, essentially, Sam and I's entire existence at UW as employees is a drop-in session for people with travel reimbursement questions. Whenever you have a travel reimbursement question, feel free to either call us at this phone number right here on our website or send us an email. If you want to hop on a quick call, we're always happy to do that. Or if you want to just do a phone call, or if you're happy getting your question answered over email, that also works. So whenever you have a question about any of this stuff, you can always shoot us an email. That's what we're here for. Danielle is covering, I think I answered that question. Dan Olson says, for non-employees, there's no ER attached the form to what? So, Dan, for non-employees, there is no ER. You'd attach the form to the miscellaneous payment request in the attachments right here. Eric Shaker asks, does miscellaneous payments require a separate security role from ERs? I'm not finding the mod in 1016. No, I could create the ER. Okay. So Sam, correct me if I'm wrong. It's expense data entry specialist to make a miscellaneous payment on behalf of others too?
Yes, I was actually looking for that too. I'm looking at the job aid, and there's several roles, but expense data entry specialist for UW-A is applicable, and then requisition requester is applicable for UW-M.
Yeah. So if you are UW-A, oh yeah, you said you were UW-A. So Eric, to make one of these, you will need to have, to make a miscellaneous payment, you'll need to have expense data entry specialist security role. Thank you, Sam. Erica says, as a confirmation, will the miscellaneous payments mechanism for non-UW employee travel show travel object class codes for grants when they are charged in Workday financials? Will they show as travel spend categories? Unfortunately, this is a limitation, one of the many limitations of having non-employee travel go on miscellaneous payment. The only travel code that will hit your grants for non-employee travel will be essentially that non-employee travel SC, that the spend category that we mentioned for them. So it will all lump under SC 2566. But to your point, I think maybe for the purposes of recording our transactions correctly at the university, we may take this as a good argument for why this should be improved in the future to allow us to properly itemize employee travel. So, but to answer your question at the moment, they will not show as travel spend categories. Non-employee travel will show as a lump sum payment under SC 2566, non-employee travel. Okay, Ruth Levy asks, does the form have a link for which paperwork is needed when reimbursing non-citizens? And can you show how we attach documents so they remain confidential? In Ariba, they link to DocuSign. So, okay, so I believe that is something, as for the portal, that is something we are working with the tax office on. I know they are working on implementing a portal that will integrate with Workday. I believe it's Thomson Reuters, but at this time, we don't have the complete information about that. So apologies for that. But as for your question about the form having the documents needed, it will, let's see, does this link to it? It will not. So it will, well, actually, no, it does. So if you are not a US citizen, you'd follow this. So you'd say no. And let's say F1. Then if you did enter or leave the United States, please provide a hard copy of your passport ID page, and you'll click that you do that, and an I-94. And then we, Sam and I, will check for that on the expense report. So please make sure to be as thorough as possible in filling out this form to have as streamlined a process as possible for non-employee travel. Scott Bailey says, plus one Erica, my unit spends about $1 million a year on student travel, so I need to be able to track it in a variety of ways for reporting. We also reimburse mileage at lower than the IRS. Can we override the form? I believe you can. No, I guess you can't. So essentially what you could do is you could just do a manual override down here, other miscellaneous. You could do mileage override and then do a manual calculation here showing us what you're doing and then put the total over here. I will say, it being a form, it does allow us the freedom to add on as many, to tack on as many manual things as we need. So I guess there's that. So if you need to go lower rate than this, just add a note and let us know, or you can even type it out. But you know, you'll still need the mileage documentation. But yes, we do hear you. This is a unfortunate limitation of this process. Maddie Meadowlark, great last name, says, note the miscellaneous payment PDF does not allow me to edit mileage rate. Yes, okay. At the very least, have a drop down with different rates. So I'm not sure what you mean by the medical rate from the IRS. But to work around from now, yeah, you can add it as an other if you want to reimburse lower, but we will be updating, we will be keeping the form up to date and using the same link. So once they update this next year, we'll go in the form and change that. But yes, that's a good idea. We'll look into updating it. Please give us all the feedback possible about this form. We want to make this form as streamlined as we possibly can to help not only you, but also us, since we're going to be looking at these a lot. So yes, please give us your feedback on the form. Excellent, Kathy. And Myrla, we will not address non-travel reimbursement. Sam and I work in the travel office, so We only know things about travel reimbursement. Robert Myers asks, can we pay expenses for others on the same ER like the paid by claimant in Ariba? And brother, I gotta tell you, this is it's not gonna be as easy. Essentially, there is not a paid by claimant option in Workday like in Ariba. So okay, so Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but the workaround that we had was you're just gonna have to lump all of their lines, all of their expenses together. So like if they are claiming lodging on behalf of others, they're just gonna have to enter the total and explain how many people they're claiming for.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a setback right
A little
now.
bit.
Yeah, it has been confirmed that you'll just put it as a lump sum, as one whole amount. Again, like Renee said, on lodging, most likely it'll go over per diem. You'll do the overage, the daily expenses, and then in the memo field, since that's required, you're just going to put claimants, number of people, and then you can, similarly like we did in Ariba, put the name of the other people that they are claiming for in the comment field at the bottom. But yeah, unfortunately, that is the current process for claiming expenses on behalf of others, that it's not meals.
Yeah, unfortunately. Okay. So I do see we are at time. This is, to be honest with you, the first time that we have actually used the entire 2.5 hours. So this has been it's been wild, but a lot of great questions. And to be respectful of your time, we're gonna have to cut it off there. We will try to answer your questions to the best we can in the parking lot. But thank you all for coming. We will have more of these. This recording will be posted. And I think we have another of these next week, Sam. When's the lot? No, we will schedule another one very soon.
Only
And we
11.
will. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.